How smart is the smartest person you can think of? If you imagined someone like Albert Einstein or Elon Musk, then they're probably seriously smart. But did you know there was one man who was even smarter? Some think the man we're talking about had the highest IQ of all time, but you've probably never heard of him. So who is this mystery genius? Why do people think he's so smart? And more importantly, why doesn't anybody know about him? We're going to take a closer look at the life of this extraordinary genius. His name was William James Sidis. Nobody is sure if he was born in Boston or New York, but we do know he was born in 1898 to two pretty intelligent people. His parents were both born in the Ukraine and moved to America. His mom was a doctor and his dad was a famous psychologist. But even they didn't match William's intelligence. They knew something was unique about William when they caught him writing a letter before he'd even had his first birthday. Even if you expect your kid to be clever, that's got to blow any parent's mind. But they encouraged him to keep learning. He was reading the New York Times by the age of just 18 months. By just 6 years old, he could fluently speak 7 languages. That's English, obviously, but also Russian, French, German, Turkish, Hebrew, and Armenian. Just think how impressed we are when we meet an adult who can speak more than one language. He was just a tiny child. I guess he got bored with those languages because he soon created one of his own. It was called Vendergood, but we're not sure if he kept using it later in life. Being able to speak all those languages also meant he could read some books that no other kid could ever read. At age 4, he was reading the original versions of Homer's works, Odyssey and the Iliad. At 6 years old, he'd moved on to Aristotle. He was also writing his own works, including a novel, poetry, knowledge-based books like one on human anatomy, and he even drafted a constitution of a working utopian society. His parents thought this was a pretty incredible thing. They spent huge sums of money on learning materials for William, from books to maps and dictionaries. He soaked up all that knowledge like a sponge. Remarkably, at 9 years old, he was accepted at Harvard University. They said he was too young to attend, and he needed to wait until he was 11 before he could enroll in classes. So he attended Tufts University for 2 years while he was waiting to go to Harvard. Rumor has it, while he was there, he studied Einstein's theory of relativity, and as a hobby, he'd take time to correct mistakes in his university mathematics textbooks. When he finally turned 11 years old, he became the youngest person ever to attend Harvard. His record still stands today. It didn't take long before he was giving lectures himself. 4 years before he even graduated, he was lecturing other students in the Harvard Mathematics Club on highly complex subjects like four-dimensional bodies. That happens to be one of the most complex fields in all of mathematics. His work was groundbreaking and caught the attention of leading experts in the field, even if most people couldn't understand even the most basic parts of what he was saying. And it wasn't just the students who were interested. Over 100 university lecturers were showing up to his classes. He finally graduated in 1914 at the insanely young age of 16. Some say he might have had the highest IQ of anyone who ever lived. In case you're wondering, a score of 100 is average, and actually, the test is revised every few years to make sure that number stays average. If you score over 130, you're considered highly advanced or gifted. Albert Einstein's IQ has been reverse analyzed and scored 130. Isaac Newton was estimated to have a score of 190. If you're thinking it doesn't get higher than that, you're wrong. William's IQ is estimated to be somewhere between 250 to 300. That's pretty incredible considering that makes him literally 3 times smarter than most people, and more than twice as smart as renowned genius Einstein. So if that's true, then why doesn't anybody know about him? Unfortunately, just because you're smart, that doesn't mean you'll fit in well. Ever seen how smart kids don't have many friends? William was that smart kid, but tripled. He hated crowds, struggled to fit in, and he found all the attention from the media very stressful. He even told reporters that he really wanted a normal life, and he felt the only way to get that was to be completely alone. Sadly, even though he was so unpopular, the people who did get to know him all said he was a wonderful person to be around. His parents had pushed him hard to achieve big things in the academic world, but he didn't want that life. It was pretty hard to turn back now, though. He'd been famous for so long, he couldn't just disappear. For a short time, he worked as an assistant teacher to a math lecturer at Rice Institute, but it didn't last. He wasn't exactly popular with students because he was a lot younger than most of them. Eventually, the university asked him to leave because nobody wanted him there. Then one day, he ran into trouble. He was arrested. While participating in a May Day socialist march in Boston, the police apprehended him. They charged him with rioting and assaulting a police officer, but both charges were false. Unfortunately, that didn't make a difference. He was sentenced to 18 months in prison, whether he'd committed those crimes or not. After that, he tried his best to disappear. He started taking jobs as a low-level accountant, using different names to stay under the radar. But it was never long before people realized who he was. The moment anyone found out, he'd quit and move to a different job. He once complained that even the sight of an equation made him feel ill. For a while, he tried being a locksmith, but it was always just a matter of time before someone discovered who he really was, and the papers came looking for him again. He was still writing books on all kinds of topics, from train tickets to astronomy, but not one of them ever made any money for him. Tragically, years after his death, one of those books sold at an auction for several $100,000. By this time in his life, he could fluently speak a whopping 40 languages. Some experts even believe the number was much higher than that, maybe even 200. In 1937, it looked like things were turning around for William. He met a woman who quickly befriended him, and he was happy to share his life stories with a new friend when so few people would talk to him. Then one day, the New Yorker ran a story on him. It detailed his whole life, but it wasn't exactly kind to him. Tragically, William's new friend had actually been a reporter who was just trying to get a good story. William decided to sue the newspaper for invasion of privacy, but once again, the world wasn't on his side. In a case that still influences court rulings today, the judge decided that this wasn't an invasion of privacy because if you were once famous, you'll always be famous. That was a pretty cruel decision, considering William had spent years trying to live a private life. After that, William succeeded. He totally disappeared. There's no record of what he was doing in his last years on Earth, and not one person ever came forward to say they'd seen him. In 1944, at the age of only 46, he died from a brain hemorrhage. His landlady was the one who found him dead. At the time, he was flat broke and didn't seem to have a single friend. His lecturers at Harvard said that they believed William would become one of the greatest astronomers and mathematicians in the history of human civilization. But because nobody was nice to him, he felt he had to leave academics behind. We'll never know what he might have discovered or achieved if the world had just been a little kinder to him. But you can bet the whole world missed out on something great. What do you think about the life of William James Sidis? Would he have done something groundbreaking if he'd had more support from his peers? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss another mind-blowing true story you never knew about.